Welcome back to the I Jupiter podcast. I'm your host, Tom Franklin, and today we have on Miss Linda Eastburn, or Mrs. I didn't ask her before because that's a little bit personal, and she's here today to promote her book. She's a former USO. That's some stuff I used to do in the military. UFO researcher, and she's kind of got a little summation of stories as well as encounters and a couple theories and ideas. And we're going to get into that. But before we do, if you keep finding yourself coming back to the I Jupiter podcast, why don't you do me a favor and like and subscribe to the channel? You can also find me over on Rumble, which I'm going to be doing some more salacious type conspiracy concepts and ideas with some friends I've actually met here on the podcast. And if you'd like to come on to the podcast or have some stories, please contact me at the Eye of Jupiter podcast at gmail.com. You can also find me over at Patreon, excuse me, Spotify. I don't have Patreon. And you can also become a member if you'd like to get a show a month in advance. You get one free show in advance every month. And you also get yourself a nice little background from me for a minimal price. And there's also, if you want to help me out on the podcast and you want to give me a couple bucks so I can update my equipment, there is also a PayPal link in the description. So pardon me. Whoa. So, with all that being said, let me make sure I catch your breath. Let's welcome to the Eye of Jupiter podcast, Miss Linda Eastburn.
Hello.
Hi, Linda. Hi. Welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
All right, it's great. You contacted me, I think through Messenger on Facebook. I think it was you who contacted me, which is pretty cool. I'm very happy that you did that, and we've had some cordial conversations. And you were like, I'd like to come on, and now you're here. So for the listeners, watchers, and viewers of the I Jupiter podcast, could you please do me a favor? Tell us a little bit about yourself and where we can find you.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm Linda Eastburn. My background is really in UFO research. In the 90s, I got really involved with that. I was working as a hypnotherapist at the time as well. And so I did a lot of abduction hypnosis with regression, helping those people
Okay.
discover if they'd actually been abducted or not, possibly, and anyway, to get closer to their memories of those encounters. So that kind of is where I came from. Now, I've only been researching and doing interviews about Bigfoot for the last year and a half. So that's kind of a new research project. But my new book, Threshold to Encounters, really covers all of those years of UFO research, all of the years of paranormal research, and now the last year and a half of Bigfoot research. So it encompasses a lot. And what I began to notice as I was interviewing a lot of people about Bigfoot is that there were some similarities between the encounters with aliens and the encounters with Bigfoot. And a lot of it had to do with the person itself, but sometimes it was the circumstance around the encounter also. So that's included in my book, but I also go into a lot of theories in the book about, kind of some things that it might possibly be. I mean, we none of us really know the absolute truth of any of this. So I don't know that we can say definitively that, yeah, it's this or this or this. But I do think that there are some possibilities, that there's some things we are not thinking about. I mean, there's just a lot of weird stuff that goes on in the world. And I think we have a limited perception. We tend to put all of these things somewhat in a box, especially ghost. If you think about it, when people have paranormal ghost experiences, it almost always is associated with some kind of a deceased person. And what if ghosts are not just deceased people? We don't know that for sure. But also, I've heard a lot of Bigfoot experiences that mimic ghost experiences. They're there, then
Wow.
they're suddenly gone. They're walking along, they're leaving physical evidence, but there's no body there. I mean, ghosts do that. Ghosts do poltergeist experiences or somewhat like that. They'll hear a big ruckus, Bigfoot ruckus, and there should be some kind of evidence physically that they've done something or that they're there, and nothing. There's nothing there. So actually, a lot of Bigfoot encounters, or what people presume are Bigfoot encounters, mimic ghost encounters. So I started putting all this together, and the book really has an enormous amount of personal experiences that I've researched or talked to people about. There are a lot of them that are personal. It's people I know that have
Okay.
had some encounters from seeing a UFO craft. I personally saw an orange craft. You saw it an orange craft. It was a light. in a field where there were 3 animal mutilations. That was back in the 90s, really my early days. I didn't even think to associate it with a craft or a UFO, but later on I heard that orange light is associated somewhat with animal mutilations. So that
Wow.
was an interesting moment. And then I started talking to people about UFOs, and then suddenly almost everyone I knew had some form of a sighting or some kind of an encounter. Even Bigfoot in the community where I grew up. There were people that saw Bigfoot sightings close by, several. So as I wrote the book, some of them got in there. Some of those sightings came in even after I had finished the book. So lots and lots of research, lots of encounters, and lots of personal experiences with these things.
That's fantastic. I mean, like, I wanted to go back to the hypnotic regression. Do you feel
Sure.
that it is a very viable way of getting into like the meat and potatoes of someone's story so they can remember? Do you feel that holds any type of scientific merit? What's your experience with that?
I don't think it's a truth serum. I don't think that it's an absolute. I think that it can get us much closer to memory. I mean, I've proven it with things that you can prove it with. Like people who would remember their childhood, and things that they didn't have a conscious memory of, but they could remember their grandmother. Maybe that was no longer
Okay.
alive. And then talk to someone about their grandmother, what she would do, or what things, activities, and they would remember those, but they may have only been like 1 or 2 years old and didn't have a conscious memory at all. So those we can validate. Some of those we can validate to know that you can go back and remember things. I remember hypnotizing this one man and took him back to his childhood, and he was just a little bitty tack, about a year old, and he could remember the smell of the hair tonic on his dad's hair, because his dad would hold him on his shoulders. And he said when he smelled that, he knew it was a real memory, because suddenly it brought it back. Yeah, that's my dad's hair tonic.
Wow,
So
that's so cool.
there are things that can validate, that it is actually a conscious memory. When you go into something like an abduction, because it is such an abnormal experience, I mean, those are things we experience every day of the week. I just leave it up to that person as to how valid they feel it is when we come out. I try not to judge that too harshly. I know it's not a true serum. It doesn't necessarily have to be an absolute, encounter just because you remember one, but it does some satisfaction for them regardless, because there's that unknown factor. And even if it be real or not real, sometimes it can ease their mind, and other times it can cause a disturbance because they didn't want to be abducted, but once they found out that maybe they were, it can be
My,
really disturbing
yeah,
sometimes
probably
emotionally.
probably. I'm sure it probably fills some holes about some questions they've had a lot of times too. I'd imagine.
It can, because so many of these people, the only memory they have maybe is a light in the bedroom at night, or in the yard outside, or they may even have a memory of like an alien at the foot of their bed, and then it just goes
Wow.
blank. There's no other memory, and they just feel a need to have some kind of an answer. And I don't
Hmm.
blame them. I mean, that would be a scary thing, and you just don't know what's happened to you.
That was scary at my age of 44 now. I can imagine when you're, a young child, that would be very, very, very troublesome, troubling,
Yeah.
excuse me. I think the initial reason I asked you that is because I'm speaking with a gentleman. He's been on the podcast. His episode has been released. This is going to be sometime in September. It's a lot of people have been contacting me, and I'm sorry it's going to be kind of bumped down the line. Is your book already out?
It is out. You can get it on
Okay.
Amazon.com.
Okay. Whew, okay.
Yeah.
It was around the release date. I'd have to do some more moving and make sure I slip you in there before the book came out to help you out. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I had this gentleman on. His name is Rocco Fowler, and he claims to be, or he says he is, and I believe him, a victim, or an asset, as he calls it, of MK Ultra, and
Oh, wow.
he is going through hypnotic regression therapy at the moment. And I think 2016 or 14, I think it was 14, he started to like recognize that something was wrong. You know what I mean? Like the whole time something was wrong. And recently, within the last, I don't know how long, a couple months, a year, he's been seeing a therapist that he trusts. And a lot of these memories are coming out. And he's saying that because the reason he started going is because, like, a certain song would play or a certain something would happen, and he would get, for lack of a better term, because I don't like this kind of terms, triggered. Like something would like pop in his head, and he would
Right.
feel a certain way, really awkward and really bad. And I just, like when I hear about it, and then there's somebody who's on the other end of it, I just like to hear the perspective from the end of the therapist as well. And I think that's why I initially asked the question. It's just, I don't know, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement, I guess.
Well, when I first started, I didn't really know about that program, and as time has gone by, of course, I have learned more about that. But I remember early on, because I would teach a class in hypnosis as well, and I remember early on a man coming to my class. He got about halfway through the class, and I had an extra night of the week for a practice night for people, anyone who wanted to come. It wasn't mandatory, but if they wanted to, they could. And he came this one Sunday night for practice sessions. He was the only student that showed up that night. So he started telling me a really bizarre story. And it was sort of like that. He said he was brought into this organization because he was married to one of the daughters of this man that was like really high up in the organization. So he went into this organization, and at the very high levels of this, they took him through the ranks really fast. But at that level, they were doing some really strange things, and it sounded a lot like this, but they were sort of programming him to receive things, receive messages, and to see things. And it, it had an impact. Let's put it like
Yeah.
that. It had an impact on him. Well, this was years later, and he had moved back to my neck of the woods, which is Midwest in the U.S., and that was on the East Coast. So he had moved back here. He took this hypnosis class, and he was very intelligent. He was, I think, a stockbroker by trade, but he was very bright. He asked really intelligent questions throughout the duration of the course. He seemed very calm and settled, but this night he didn't seem calm at all.
Oh, wow.
He started he would tell me a little bit, and then he'd back off, and he'd tell me a little bit more, and then he'd just back off. Like there was such deep hesitation to even mention this. But it was a lot about mind control. And then he told me about this organization. And then he told me finally about them, kind of programming him into this. But now, even now, even years later, he was still seeing things. He was seeing, he thought they were projecting aliens into his house. He thought they
Oh,
were
wow.
projecting UFOs in the sky above his house. Now, this is one of the reasons in my book I have to go into the idea of somewhat of projections possibly being real, because this was in the
Oh,
early 90s and
wow.
I knew nothing about that. But they can, that there is technology now that can literally place an image in your mind, from a
Yeah, yeah,
distance.
yeah. So I think they call it like voice to skull technology. I think that,
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
yeah, yeah,
the correct wording for it, but I've heard of it before. Yeah, that's incredible.
yeah.
Because he was saying that he was telling me that they like he goes into the astral realm and he does missions on like the backside of Mars to protect like children against like crazy like this stuff. It's a lot for me. You know what I mean? But like for someone to confide in me like that it means a lot to me, of course. And I'm here to listen to it. It's just coming from somebody with your background and your field of expertise, it's just good to know that maybe hopefully that he's actually getting some type of help trying to figure this out now.
Well, it's always iffy
Sure.
when you have someone that has, an extraordinary experience. You don't know exactly where all that comes from. I do know, that there's certainly people that are very susceptible to suggestion. And
Yeah.
if they can, work with both drugs and hypnosis and split the mind to some degree, they can trigger them into doing things they don't realize they're doing. I mean, that's been shown,
We've
in
seen that in those
fascination.
comedy acts. We've seen them in comedy acts on stage. They'll pull people on
Oh, yeah.
stage, hypnotize them, and they think they're a dog with worms, and they're scooting their butt across the ground. So it's like, it's like I think there's some people who are not like you were saying, people who are more suggestible than others, and that's interesting. I'm not trying to get too conspiratorial on you, but there's things out there like that. And now that you're saying what you're saying, so it's more and more. I think a lot of these things are coming more and more to the surface, and that's also the reason why a lot of these Bigfoot experiencers or dogman experiencers are coming forward, because in the past it would be so ridiculed, and now there's spaces like these and others which they can come forth and and speak their truth, and it's pretty fascinating. That's why these kind of shows are popular.
Exactly. I think that it's really important for us to explore not only that people are having these experiences, because they certainly are having these experiences, but what exactly is the experience that they're having. I mean, if a UFO craft lands in your yard and aliens are walking all around your house, you can see it, but your neighbor can't. What is that experience? I remember this one woman who described it this way. She and her family had been having these very unusual a contact with crafts and aliens, and just some strange things have been going on with them. And they were very grounded people before this started. So it wasn't like they were like out on a limb and, like they were trustworthy. And I think she
Right,
had a
right. Known by the
PhD,
community,
was
things. Yes.
teaching at a university, they were just really grounded, normal people. But then suddenly they started being contacted by these aliens, and then just a bunch of strange things started happening. But one day she walked over to the neighbor's house, and there was some trees and yards, between the two houses, quite a bit of space. And she was walking home. It was a normal day. And suddenly she said it was like she walked through a wall. And all of a
I've heard
sudden
that
she could
before.
see a craft and aliens walking around in the yard. And she said her whole demeanor shifted and changed. It was like she was a whole different person as she walked through this wall. And she just observed them in complete, almost numbness. And then it was like something turned off and they were gone. And suddenly now she's hysterical, that she's just been in the company of these aliens in this craft and she doesn't know what just happened to her. But
Hmm.
who knows what that is? It's like a
Maybe
portal or something.
like a time warp or something. Could be a number of things. Yes.
Yeah, it's like we don't know what we're dealing with. I don't think we truly understand what we're dealing with. I don't know what would make that happen. It's not the reality that we are accustomed to. It's here and everyone can
That's a
see
great way.
it and everyone experiences it. Same thing with another researcher that was out one night with two other people. And one person looked in the sky and saw a craft that she described as Detroit upside down. It was that vivid and bright and lots of lights,
Wow.
and very, very, like buildings will have different heights. It looked like that. The other
Great
two are
description.
standing right beside her, looking straight up at the very same thing, and they see nothing but stars. I mean, nothing. They see nothing. So what causes that? Is it the person? Is it some kind of a phenomena that only they can see? Is it a projection to them? Is it a reality that they're able to perceive that we can't? And I don't know. I don't know what we're dealing with, but it's not just normal reality.
I think that was a great way of putting that. It's a reality that we are accustomed to. I think that is just that to me makes me feel very comfortable with you because that means that you understand what you know. What I mean, you're the same. I've never heard it put that way, and for me, it's very touching that we are accustomed to. Therefore, you have like a lot of empathy for people who are actually coming to see you with these stories and with these encounters, and that to me right there made me go, oh, if I because you said Bigfoot and poltergeist. When I was 8 years old, I had a poltergeist encounter with my two other sisters, and that's what kind of over the course of whatever 35 years catapulted me into doing what I do. I don't know how that pertains to Bigfoot. I would love you to go into that a little bit more, so we can maybe kind of tease your concepts in your book apart a little bit better. But yeah, I just love that. It's not the reality we're accustomed to. That's fantastic.
Yeah, because we only have our five senses to judge it by, and what makes sense to us, and we have a baseline of reality that we work with every day. And when something doesn't fit that paradigm, and we honestly don't know where to put it. But a lot of the explanations, and I trust what people tell me that they have experienced. And they would be the first one to say, this is not my normal everyday experience. So
Right.
yeah, so what makes that happen? I don't know. I think there are a lot of ideas, and any one of them may be correct. Maybe some people are more evolved and they can just perceive different things than I can. I mean, I'm limited on my sight and I'm limited on my hearing, and maybe some people can just perceive things that I can't. Now, I also have a background in remote viewing and intuitive work and teaching that as well. And one of the things I know
Oh
is
wow.
even I remember, I close my mind. I kind of do the Edgar Casey type of method most of the time. And I could close my eyes and see an image of something. And I remember one time seeing, which to me, this is just a communication tool that the inner mind uses for me to understand something. A woman was going through some health issues, some problems. And, just as a comfort, I saw a little angel on her shoulder, and knew to explain to her that, that spiritually there was, something with her and hopefully would help her get through this. And it was just more of a comforting signal to me, to give her that kind of message. And there was another woman in the room that was also intuitive, but interpreted that little angel in a completely different way. I saw a little angel on your shoulder, and to me, this was just a communication tool. This woman saw this huge angel hovering over her, and it was just a real thing in the room. So those are very different perceptions of the very same message. I see it as a little bitty angel, just a communication tool, and she sees it as this giant, whatever she saw. That's a difference in maybe the way people perceive things,
Yeah.
because this is a friend of mine that saw the big angel. And before we've been in similar situations where we both had some kind of an intuitive impression, but mine was always just very common, practical, small, just telling me what I needed to know to get through. And so that kind of is the way my mind perceives things.
Right.
And with her, everything was out of proportion. Everything was just exaggerated. That's
But
just
even
a
in
difference maybe in the way we are.
Yeah, but even in normal base reality, where however we want to put it, is like perception is subjective, even in that.
Very,
So
very
if you're doing if you're being intuitive and you're able to see into like some type of medium or some type of remote viewer of sorts, I'd imagine that concept holds as well, or holds the same type of stay in that way too. Man, my words, it's been a long day today. I was on the hot sun and the roof all day.
oh my,
No, yeah, I do. I have to do what I got to do down here. I'm in Mexico. I don't know if you know that,
yeah,
but I live down here in Mexico.
yeah.
Um, I wanted to get into remote viewing because you were talking about ghosts, and you were talking about most people perceive them as being a dead relative or some type of dead person, or they have the smart, intelligent type, or they have the ones that just kind of repeat themselves. Now, I've heard this concept. I was wondering if you could say anything or speak to it, maybe that maybe when people are being remote viewed, the people are in the room or wherever they are, they can perceive that, and they may perceive that as some type of paranormal, activity.
I have heard that. Now, the only time that I have experienced someone being aware of me when I was remote viewing them was
Okay.
it was a student, actually, because I teach that too. It was a student, and I was remote viewing the student, and I could see the student turning around looking at me, and they became aware of that. But I've had not so much that they can see me in the room, even though I haven't had anyone tell me they could or couldn't see me in the room. They will know I'm there. They will perceive when I'm there. I also had a student one time that because I teach extreme responsibility with this, because you can invade privacy very easily with
Yeah.
this. So I just teach a lot of ethics with this. You don't go into someone's energy field without their permission. But I had a student once that didn't have my permission, even though it would have probably been okay. But they decided to go in and look at my energy field or something, and they were rejected. They said that there was this, very strong presence came up and said, "You must leave here now." It just
Wow.
wasn't allowed. I don't know where that came from. I think I was asleep at the time. So I think that there can be some form of interaction. Now I know
Uh-huh.
there can be a dialogue, between people without any kind of physical thing. Knowledge maybe on both ends, or at least knowledge on one end. I remember one time my husband and I we were moving to this house, and it was a little bit out in the country, no other houses around. And it was a day that he told me, I think he was going to be over there about 3 o'clock that afternoon. And I was just taking a load in the car over there, just unload a few things and kind of get a start on the moving process, even though we weren't in any hurry to get that move going. So I went over there, unloaded everything from the car, got back into my car, and realized I didn't have my keys. I left them in the house. And of course, the key to the house was also in the house. So
Oh,
now I
that's
was locked
wonderful.
out of the house. Here I was in the car. It was about, I think it was around 9:30 in the morning. And I remember him saying he would be finished with other work he was doing and would be back over at this house around 3 in the afternoon. So I thought, okay, I wasn't going to walk home. That was miles and miles and miles. So no, I'm not going to do that. So I decided to just intuitively connect with him and ask him what time he was going to be there.
Oh my
Because
God, dude.
9:30, it's 9:30 in the morning. He's going to be there at 3. That's what he last told me. So I connected with him. I don't think he knew I did, but I asked him, what time will you be here? And specifically, I heard him say, I should be there around 10:30. So I thought, okay, 10:30, I can do this. Actually, it was more precise than that. It was more like 9:40 or 10:43 or something. I mean, it was like to the minute. I remember that voice came back
Wow,
as that.
that's
He didn't know
incredible.
he answered me. He didn't have any idea. So I thought, well, that's just an hour, hour and a half, something like that. I'll just wait. So I waited and waited. I didn't really have anything else to do anyway, piddled around the yard or something. Did you know at exactly 10:43? And the odd thing was that it was to the minute he pulled in the driveway. And I thought, wow, that is good.
No
So whether
kidding.
they're aware of it or not, they're communicating. You can definitely connect mind to mind. You can definitely get answers, from things when you need it. I mean, it's a very valuable tool to learn.
Well, how long has this tool or technique been being used? Because we've heard of things like Project Looking Glass. How long do you think, say for example, the government or other people of the past, how long has this been a practice?
I didn't hear about it until the 90s, but I know I've met all the people from the start. Well, not all the people, but a lot of the people that came forward and wrote books and teach the classes and things like that. I've studied with them and have met them from the 70s. So I'd spin back a long ways. That form of remote viewing, I think, was established in the 70s out of Stanford Research Institute. But before that, I'm sure that there were many, many other methods, of course, of being able to do this. And I actually learned and was doing this long before I learned remote viewing, the technical remote viewing method, which is probably more accurate if you're going to get a real specific answer. Of course, I got a specific answer by just asking my husband what time he was going to be there. It could not have been more exact.
No kidding.
And,
Yeah.
and those work. That works too. I mean, I tended to do more of the Edgar Cayce method where I'd go because I was doing hypnosis. So I would go into a deep inner level state and just be able to get answers to things.
So have you heard of Project Looking Glass?
I don't know that one specifically. Where did that come from?
I don't know where it comes from. It's probably some three-letter agency. I don't know which one, but supposedly, this is what I've heard, that they can look into the future and
Yeah.
they can then change something in the present and then see if what they're looking for will then change in the future. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
Like they
yeah.
can
Yeah.
by
No,
predicting like
that
changing the past, they
definitely.
predict the future.
Yeah. Yeah. You can definitely do that. I remember once looking and actually just the action of observing the future changes the future. I mean there has a bearing on that. It will have a bearing
Okay.
on that. At least that's what I believe. And I'll tell you kind of because when I first started this, there was a lot of controversy in my mind. Okay, I can see it, but am I contributing to creating it if I see it, or if it already set in stone and I'm just looking at it, that kind of thing.
Right.
And it was kind of shown to me. I remember going on always about a 5-hour drive. It was in the winter and had started kind of misting rain, and it was like real iffy if the roads were going to get slick or not. And I don't like to drive on icy roads. So it was down through Arkansas. I live in Springfield, Missouri, and it was going down through
Oh,
Arkansas
okay.
toward Little Rock. And I remember asking about the roads, just intuitively, give me some concept of what I'm dealing with here, and as I progress. And I clearly understood that there would be dry pavement when I got to Conway, Missouri, Arkansas, which is just north of Little Rock. So as I'm driving along, it's still raining, it's misting, it's starting to ice a little bit on the windshield. I'm starting to get nervous. Get to Conway. I mean, it was dry roads from that point forward. So the next day I'm like, well, I wonder if I contributed to that dry road, or did I,
That
just
definitely,
see it, or
yeah.
what it was. So I was just asking about that. And what just kept coming back when I would ask those questions was it's both. When you see it, you contribute to creating it.
Wow.
You can't go a different way with that. So I think that you can definitely change the future by knowing what is going to happen. And then I think you also change the future by just seeing it to be that way.
No kidding, dude. Okay, because I've heard about this project that it no longer either exists or maybe it's changed, but supposedly, once again, this is all supposed. There's a certain thing that's going to happen, whatever that may be. It's supposedly good, whatever that may be, and they're trying to change it, and they can't. So what
Right.
it is that they're trying
Yeah.
to do that they can't. So I find it to be very interesting that a government is doing such things into which they want to change the future through some type of, I don't know what, psychic phenomenon, some type of intuition, some type of program, some type of technique. I don't know. It just they are so capable of doing such nefarious things. Why couldn't they just take that same concept and make something good out of it? I don't know. I'm just kind of basically spitballing in a moment. Um, Tell me, like when you interview some of these people, is there anything that just absolutely shocked you when you put in your book?
Um, there are lots of stories that are a little bit shocking, of course. Some of them is the repetition stories where the same things happen to people often, where they see an alien often, kind of like all of their lives, and they have to come to terms with some of that. Some of those are kind of bizarre. I remember the very first person that I took under hypnosis who felt like she was an abductee. This was a woman in her probably middle age somewhere, and I had not done that particular thing before. I'd done a lot of regressions, but nothing of that nature. And the hysteria that she went into, I was not prepared for. That was probably the most shocking experience that I've had, because I didn't know for sure how to bring her back into calm. And it took a while to do that because she was so hysterical. And then to be able to continue on getting information from a more calm state. So that was a really shocking moment. Another kind of thing, shocking is relative to the progress that I've made too, because in the
Mhm.
beginning, every little thing was kind of shocking as I'm researching this. And we have these thresholds ourselves that we just like, oh, I can't go there. I remember these people coming to my home and giving me a report about their entire car was taken up into a craft as they're driving down an interstate, and I'm going, okay, you know. And then later on, I was like, that doesn't shock me today. Today, I can think, yeah, that could be real. But
Yeah,
at that time, it was like that was my threshold. It's like, oh, come on, you've got to be kidding me. You expect me to believe this? So as time has progressed, there have been more and more and more incidences. It's like now I'll believe almost anything is possible because so many people have had so many strange experiences. So
yeah,
yeah, those are. I think also a dogman experience. I remember doing this interview with someone, and the way he described this, it was almost like a hypnotic state on steroids. Like there were several of them, and they had this unbelievable dogman, frightening dogman experience. But they all had the very same experience. May have been very real, but this thing just disappeared in front of their face also.
I've heard of that as
So
well.
yeah. So, what makes something to be so frightening and so real to more than one person? There's more than one witness, and then suddenly it's just gone.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
have to
that's
live
pretty.
the aftermath of
That
that.
that's an interesting. It's a very interesting thing that you're bringing up in your book, that like how you're connecting that type of phenomenon with the paranormal, which people experience in their houses. It's just very interesting. Have you ever heard of Mary Rodwell?
No.
She's a clinical. Let me make sure I get this right. Clinical psychiatrist in Australia, and
Mm.
she has gone through and she was like for many years, 20, 30 years, very straight laced. And then someday some person came forward and started telling them about her UFO experiences, and she started speaking with these people, and she's pretty well known actually, and she has a lot of books out as well. She's a very well spoken, very very smart and intelligent, interesting person, and she was telling me. that she believes that the UFO things, there's many different races, and she also believes that it's also a U.S. government program. Like if it's either a neutral or good experience, it's more out there, whatever that means, interdimensional, interplanetary, whatever. But if it's more negative, it's more like a governmental thing. And I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah,
I mean, like
yeah, I
we
can.
share
There
information.
is, yeah, there is one case that I know really well of a woman who, she was a grown woman. We didn't have any memory really, and she was a grown woman, and she met up with a friend, and this friend and she were walking down a country road one day. Maybe I think they were having some kind of a reunion, and he said, "Do you remember when we were young and kids and we saw this UFO in the sky?" And she said, "Yeah, she did remember that. That was a really long time ago." Well, that kind of took her into, wow, I wonder what happened,
Right.
that we saw this UFO. It was real close to them. And so she started kind of exploring that a little bit. And finally, she ended up doing some hypnosis regarding that. And in the beginning, the only memories coming out was the craft. And then eventually she remembered going into the craft and having these experiences with these aliens and, just various experiences. Every time she went under, she had a little bit more of an experience. But then she started having automatic memories started coming back. And then it got very confusing because she would see these aliens, but she would also see military people. And then she started being followed by these, military cars. And a lot of strange things started happening to her. I mean, she even suspected they were broke into her house at one point in time, and she suspected that when she would go for hypnosis, they would follow her. Sometimes they would, show up in restaurants where she was. They would just be around all the time, kind of observing her, kind of like the Men in Black thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very,
and
very
and
strange.
eventually it took her a long, long time to come to terms with this, but today she feels like she was one of the people that was under mind control program, that they were I don't know if she was doing something for them or if they were simply seeing if they could make someone believe that they had been abducted by aliens. She doesn't know that, but now she does believe that it was entirely the military that did that.
That is so crazy. Why would they do that? I mean, we know that they do, like, it was a hate Ashbury. There was a lot of things in that. There was where they were giving people like LSD in the '60s. I think
Yeah.
what was that? What was it? What was
Candy
it? The
Jones.
Unabomber was a yeah. The Unabomber was part of those experiments, and you see
Yeah.
what happened to that guy.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot, honestly, not to be weird, a lot of things that he said ended up being true. But have you ever heard like when people have these experiences, like there's also like a black helicopter around or things like that?
Yeah, on the UFO incidents often, but I had one incident that this man talked about doing some research on Bigfoot, and the same thing happened. It was interesting because I've done two interviews with him, and both of them didn't take. I mean, it was like the recording wasn't even there. So I don't know what happens with his recordings,
Whoa!
but they just no, they don't make it to the light of day. But he was himself not so much a Bigfoot researcher. He was doing work for someone else. It's pretty well known. And I think he was in Northwest US and kind of in a very remote area. But he was a tech guy, a sound guy, video guy. And he had set up these, I think they were, just cameras as well as sound equipment in a complete circle, a radius pretty large. And he camped out. It was really remote. It was way down a gravel road, then down a path, way, way out from
Yeah,
nowhere.
right.
And he was there for a couple of weeks, and he was uploading satellite via satellite up to another link over to this person that was doing the deeper research, so they could see if they had anything, any sounds or any. And this was a high traffic Bigfoot area, supposedly. So this was like a 2-week project. I mean, this is pretty relevant.
Right.
So this more well-known person was supposed to be coming in that day to, kind of observe everything and to talk to him about it. So he went into town, which was like hours and hours and hours, to get over to the place where he could get some supplies for the week. He got that. He came back, and as he came back, the less not the path, but the gravel road, and this was like way out from nowhere. There just happened to be a van sitting there that had some kind of a and I'm not sure if it was like a cell phone emblem on the van or some kind of some kind of an internet tower, kind of thing. But there were no towers around. There was nothing. There was absolutely no reason for that thing
I've
to be
heard
there.
of this. I've heard of this.
So he goes down the little path to his camp, unloads everything, and decides, okay, he doesn't have everything was down. Everything was down. There was no satellite. He wasn't linking anything anywhere. His phone was out. Everything was down. So he drives back down the path because this well-known person is supposed to be coming that day, and he's afraid he won't be able to find him. So he goes down the path to sit at that other crossroads. And there's that van still sitting there, but now it moves and goes down this lane across the road from him that goes literally nowhere and for no reason, and just sits up there, but he doesn't have any ability to send anything, and his phone's out at that point. And then while he's sitting there waiting for his friend, there are black helicopters start coming over.
Oh my
And so
God.
it's wow. I mean, there was a trigger of something, and I don't know what. I don't know, but that story could not get out on my channel because I could never use it.
That's so
It was just,
crazy. Maybe you
I
can get me in
know.
contact. Maybe you can like don't tell me who it is. Maybe get me in contact with him, see if it'll work with me. I mean, I think that needs to get out. That's so incredible. I've been talking to he's a relatively new researcher. His name is Harley Owens. Um, Bigfoot reports of data. Go check it out, ladies and gentlemen. He's been running into a lot of things out there. 3 years ago, he had his first Bigfoot encounter, and now he's getting some dogmen. He also has like a mark in the path, and it looks almost reptilian. It's crazy. He's running some
Yeah.
crazy stuff, and he's
Mm-hmm.
been telling me that they've been contacting him. There's also
Mm-hmm.
like black vehicles outside of his house, and it's also like like a cable. That was another guy. I think that was Tim Bills, where he's on top of the mountain where the stuff is, and there's like a cable company out there
Yeah.
for like no reason.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
apparently the government knows that these, dogman, wendigos, Bigfoot, and the like are out there, which makes me like, I don't know what the posture, to think about in my mind what the reason for keeping the secret is. Maybe it's to protect, then, there's like the logging industry. I don't know, but I definitely think they know about it, and they just want to like, they still try to ridicule, um, because they're soft disclosing the UFOs. We don't call it UAPs on the channel. I think it's just a silly word. Um, they're kind of slowly letting that ball out of the bag. There's been all the the Congress stuff and all that. I don't know why they're doing that. Maybe there's some technology that another country has that we don't have now. We're like, hey, it's UFOs, so they look like they're still in power or something. But there's been a lot of like steps towards this, at least that particular avenue of what is this. Even though I think they're all somehow interconnected. I've also heard like if there's a Bigfoot sighting, there's usually some type of paranormal, whether it be orbs or something like that, and a UFO sighting, all within say a 10-kilometer radius. Have you heard of that as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah, there's actually an area that I'm researching right now that has it all. I mean, I'm calling it Case 841. A little bit of it is in the book, but I'm making it's much lengthier than what's in the book. But
Mm-hmm.
they have Bigfoot, they have UFO craft, they have alien contact, animal mutilations, missing animals. They have ghost activity. A haunted woods is there. It's everything within this 10-mile radius. It's just and also some really strange crimes have happened in that area too. I really can't correlate those with these
Yeah, of
unusual
course.
behavior, but still, it's some really strange abnormal behavior. Period.
Yeah,
In
that's so.
that neck of the woods.
So, we're not. We got about 15 minutes left. But what is what projects or what are you planning to do in the future? What is your future plans like?
Well, right now, of course, I'm continuing on with my YouTube channel, which has primarily Bigfoot, but I also cover, UFO encounters as well as some paranormal things. But it's
What's the name
primarily
of it?
Bigfoot.
What's the name of your YouTube
It's just
channel?
Linda Eastburn YouTube channel. It's very easy to find me. Just Linda Eastburn YouTube channel.
Go
But
check it out, guys.
what I'm really working on right now is a remote viewing project. I'm putting together a team, and it's really gelling well right now. And it's a team that we're looking into future events, but we're also looking into just perfecting that where we have a 90% success rate. Right now, we're doing pretty good. We're not at 90% success, but we are really close to it. And that's pretty
That's
high.
great.
So yeah, and more to come on that. I'm perfecting this kind of little group here, and we'll be doing some phenomenal things. But then beyond that, I'm going to get back into doing some more teaching in that area, and probably extend it a little bit more, because as the more you work with mind and energy and consciousness, the more you realize what you can do with it. So in the early days when I was teaching this through the 90s and up until around 2013, actually, that was primarily what I did besides real estate. And so with well, that's my bread and butter.
Gotta have a house for the ghosts to go into, Linda. I mean, I
That's right.
understand.
Yes. I've owned a couple of those, but but you learn more as you go on, and your priorities begin to change. So I want to empower people with this. I want to help people to understand that they have a lot more of a tool under their thumb than just being able to see something, that they can use this. I mean, I used it all through my years in real estate.
Uh-huh.
When I was buying real estate, just being able to know where to go and what to do and what something's going to
Oh,
pay for.
okay.
I remember this one place, it was a 200-acre ranch with an 8,000 square foot home on it, with these
Okay.
phenomenal event buildings that were on it was a horse ranch is what it was. Gorgeous place. And it was out of our budget. I mean, this was, you have to understand, this was also in the 90s, so the prices were a lot different than they are today.
Of
I
course.
live in Missouri too, but it was about $1 million property, and it was going to auction. There men got in some criminal trouble or something, so they were selling his house. So it was going to auction, and it was just a download intuitively of knowing this place is going to sell for $300,000. And at that time, my husband knew he could trust a lot of what I said. He said, if this sells for $300,000, we better be buying it. So we didn't have, money sitting around, to go, buy this place, even if it did sell for $300,000. So we had to, make sure that we had everything in place before the auction day, because you had to know for sure that you could buy it. And everything just fell in place. We got the money. If we did buy it that day, the loan was ready to initiate very quickly. And went that day, and $1 million place sold to us for $300,000. So it was like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, that was
where were you when I needed to buy some real estate?
But that one was probably the most extensive one. But there were just so many moments of knowing what to do when, knowing what to do when, knowing what was out there.
That's so crazy. That is so crazy. I bought 10 acres about a mile and a half off this is in the Yucatan Peninsula. It's in Mexico. About a mile and a half off of the Gulf of Mexico. It's by the way the bird flies. It's down a muddy dirt road and all that, and I paid about $6,500 for it.
Yep.
That's a good deal. I got lucky on that one. So
that
was more me. That was more me trying to manifest what it was I wanted in my life.
Exactly.
And because if that, whatever happened starting 4 years ago until the present time, if they ever try to do that with me again, it's the reason why I'm here, then that's where I go. They were like, oh, you can't leave your house? Well, okay, I'll be out on the ranch. You know what I mean? Yep. In the woods with the snakes and the scorpions and all that we have out here.
Yes.
Yeah, that's that. I had a question, but you did that real estate thing. You got me off course. Oh well. So this book, how long has it been out? Is it doing well? Is there more books in the future planned? Is there like a follow up coming? What's going on?
Well, I'm really focused on this remote viewing thing right now. So the next book will be about empowering people by using their intuition and remote viewing. And I have a couple of other books about that, but this one is going to be more direct in helping people and putting those courses together. So look for some future things. It will take a little bit of a shift. This book has been out since mid-June. I think it's doing really well.
Oh, wow, dude, that's relatively recent. That's crazy. Yeah. And it's doing well. That's fantastic. Look at my head. Moved so fast that the computer couldn't pick it up. Yeah, right. That's so cool. Now, it's like, here's my question. I finally got it again. When someone feels that they have the intuition to be a remote viewer, is there any type of certain type of, don't go into all of them, of course. I don't want you to, let the cat out of the bag, but is there any type of things that would be noticeable or that they should notice? about themselves?
Well, I think that when people are naturally intuitive, that they already have the connection there, but it's more roping that in and putting it into a discipline where they can repeat that skill every time at will. It's kind of like reading a book. Once you learn to read a language and you pick up a book, you can usually read the book. It's a skill that you can do every single time. So
Right.
with a lot of people who are born naturally intuitive, it's a hit and miss. It might come in once in a while, but it's not there all the time, and you don't know for sure. So it's more a matter of honing that skill to where something that's within their control, and it's efficient, where it's efficient, and you know your success rate, so you know how much you can trust something. And then the other thing is, a lot of people think, oh, well, I've never had an intuitive moment, so I can never be intuitive. I can never do remote viewing or anything like that. Well, I can tell you, I spent 40 years not doing anything. I had zero, zero, zero in natural intuition that I was aware of. So I had to learn to do it. It took me about 6 years of really diligent training before I became really good at it, and good enough that I feel like I could teach it and do it professionally and really put it out there. But yeah, along the way, because I was fairly much self-taught until I started working with the remote viewers. Mine was more the Edgar Cayce method with hypnosis, but but once you have a discipline and you can do it at will, then you have something that's a tool. It's a mental skill, I think, so you can use it any way you want to.
Oh wow, that makes me interested in it because I learned guitar by myself. I
Yep.
speak 2.5 languages. I speak German and Spanish as well a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Windsurfer, comedian. I've done a whole a whole bunch of stuff, and now I'm a podcaster.
Yeah,
Hopefully, somewhat professional, but we'll
exactly.
find out.
Well, a
and
lot of people don't realize that the very same thing that makes an athlete a really, really good athlete is that they repeatedly do the successful moves necessary for that skill to exist. And eventually
mhm.
they build a strong enough pathway in the mind. The myelin builds stronger and stronger. Every time you do something right, it builds stronger. And so but
Okay.
by the time that they're really, really good at it, they have enough of a strength in their mind that they don't have to think about it anymore. It's just nature. It's just natural to them.
Wow.
Well, the same thing
Okay.
is true with this. What I did was I spent 6 years of just repeatedly attempting to do this correctly and recognizing when I did it correctly, what were the circumstances that caused that to happen? How did I feel? How did I know? What made it different than when it was right or when it was wrong? It was that observation through those years that
Mm.
enabled me to hone that skill. And I realized that eventually it got to the point where I would just instantly be there. I could just go in and get an answer to something because I built really strong myelin around those pathways.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things in life. No matter it is, whatever it is that you want to do. If you, it's like people. People like to write things down. I don't write things down. I think it's just not the way I work.
Mhm.
But like a lot of it's like strong will, intuition, dedication, perseverance, and as well as like being mindful and being honest with yourself. And a lot of
Yeah.
people do not want to do the latter. They do
Mhm.
not have the ability to be like subjectively honest with themselves because it hurts sometimes.
It's
And I
true.
think if you're trying to learn a skill like the one that you've honed and now are teaching, I think it's imperative to do so.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is true. It takes a little bit of time. I mean, you don't learn a foreign language in a day and a half, and people
No.
will take a remote viewing class, and it's over a weekend, and then oh, I can't do that. Well, the reason you can't do it is because you haven't been doing it. You have to do it a bit. And eventually it will work, but you have to put in some time.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of putting in time, thank you for putting in time with me today. Look at that. Was that nice? That was good, wasn't it? That was a smooth one
It's
right
very
there.
good, very smooth, very smooth.
Oh, I'm getting better at this. Please, Linda, first of all, thank you so much for coming on one more time. Please tell us about your book. Please tell us about your YouTube channel. And please tell me where we can find you. And please, for the love of God, at the end of this, send me all your links so I can put it out there.
Okay, very good. The book you can find on Amazon.com. It's Threshold to Encounters. My YouTube channel is just my name, Linda Eastburn YouTube channel. I have over 350 videos on Bigfoot, UFOs, paranormal activity. Lots of great people on that show. I think you've been on the show too. I don't think it's up yet, but I think you'll be coming up soon. And then I'm on Facebook. You can find my group. It's Bigfoot Cryptid Midwest is the group. Come join that. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence today. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do me a favor, stick around in the green room. I'm going to see how the recording's going. You never know. I am here on the Mexican internet, and sometimes it can be a little shoddy. But
Sure.
yeah, okay, just hold on for 1 second. Let me go ahead and remove. All right. So that was Linda Eastburn. Please do me a favor, go over to her channel. Go over and check out her book. Go ahead and see what she's into. Remote viewing. Who I didn't even think she would know. I thought it was, it's always surprising when I have somebody on the channel and I just get to meet new people. She seems to be an awesome person, and it was really great that she came on. I really appreciated it, and I really appreciate you guys coming on the Eye of Jupiter as well. Please do me a favor, like and subscribe. Go out and check the channels below. There's also, we got Paul from Paranormal Among Us, and we got Blondes and Booze. We got Luncher Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, and the like. And remember, you are watching or listening to the Eye of Jupiter. And remember, we are the eye, and we are aware. Love you all.